Hello and welcome. Today we start another wonderful topic, and this topic is the Chinese civilization. And with our Form 1 work, you can remember that the civilization, we started with the Egyptian civilization, then we went to the Greek civilization, the Aztec civilization. Now we are on the Chinese civilization. So we are looking at the centers of ancient civilization. So it was, if you can remember, it was a direct connection to that topic when we are looking at the origins of people. On that topic, we looked at how people originated. Then later on, the last part of that topic, we are looking at the when people started to live together to form civilizations. So we are looking at the Stone Age, the Early Stone Age, Mid Stone Age, and the Late Stone Age. And in that topic, we are looking at what people were doing. And we said mainly in the Late Stone Age, people began to live in communities. So that was the birth of civilization. So we're trying to trace some of the places of civilization. So that's why we started with Egypt, then we went to Greeks, and we went to Aztec, and then now we are on the Chinese. So this is yet another wonderful topic that we are going to enjoy together. So let us be together up to the end of this topic. So let us look at the location. What was the location of this Chinese civilization? So the Chinese civilization, it was located along the valleys of the Yangtze and Yellow rivers. So it was between these two rivers, the Yangtze and Yellow rivers. And it developed some 3,500 years ago. So it was long time ago. 3,500 years ago, we talk of the BC, 1000 BC or so. And this valley was very fertile, hence the development of that civilization. So the place where this civilization started, it was very fertile, and therefore it attracted people to settle there for farming. So this Chinese, or the Chinese, referred to their territory as Middle Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, or they called it the Zhongguo, the Zhongguo. So we are also going to meet the names just as we did with the Aztec Empire. Remember, there were those names that we were failing even to pronounce, but here maybe we'll try to pronounce some of them. So the kingdom was secured because it was bordered, it was surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, which was to the east, the Taklamakan and the Tibet Highlands, they were to the west, and the Himalayas to the southwest, and Mongolian mountain to the north. So it was like surrounded. So let us just quickly look at the map here of China. You know, China is to the far east. So here there is the Yellow River. Yellow River is here, which was also called the Wanghe. Wanghe. And another river is here, the Yangtze. We have just mentioned the Yangtze River. Is this one, the Yangtze River, which was called the Changjiang, that river. And we also see some of the rivers and some of the places here. Anyang is here, Lungshan. So the Yellow Sea, you can see the Yellow Sea here, and the East China Sea. We are going to mention some of these places. South China Sea is here, like that. So if we go to our key here, you observe that This color represents the Shang kingdom, the Shang kingdom. So there was the Shang kingdom that ruled all this area. All this area was ruled by the Shang, and the period it was between 1500 to 1027 BC. That's when there was the Shang, and there was also the Chao kingdom. They ruled between 1027 to 221 BC. That is here. So the Shang is represented by this car, or the Chao. So the Chao, it means they ruled this area. This area was ruled by the Chao. So let us look at the factors. What were the factors that contributed to the growth of the Chinese civilization? So number one, we are going to talk of the rivers. So the valley between the two rivers, the Wangho and the Yangtze, those valleys, the valley that lie between, it was very fertile. And these rivers were navigable, hence they also provided transport. And they also provided water for irrigation, the rivers. So the rivers were also their source of happiness. So we are talking of fertile soil, transport, irrigation, and even happiness, source of happiness because of the water for irrigation, for transport, and domestic use. So the water board says water is life, and indeed without water we cannot do much. So the Chinese, they regarded their happiness from those rivers, just as it was with the Nile. The Egyptians, they regarded the Nile River, remember, they regarded it as the source of life. So here in China, they regarded the rivers as the source of happiness. They were also the source of sorrow. So those rivers, much as they were the source of happiness, they were also the source of sorrow. The reason was that there were periodical floods that were there. For example, the Yellow River. The Yellow River, it was nicknamed the River of Sorrow because of the flooding. It was flooding periodically. So when there were those flooding due to heavy rains, and the deposition. So flooding was due to heavy rains and the deposition of soil due to erosion. So there were those flooding. And peasants, Chinese, they were building the dikes to prevent the flooding there. So the peasants, those people who were the low class people, they were used to build the dikes so that they prevent the flooding. So crops and other properties, they were destroyed by the floods. So that's why we have said that it was also regarded as the source of sorrow, the source of sorrow. And also natural barriers. Apart from rivers, the natural barriers were also uh, the source of the rise of this Chinese civilization. So the civilization was surrounded by physical features. So there were mountains of Tien and Himalaya. There was also the desert of Gobi, and there was a thicket, the thick jungle, and also the Pacific Ocean. So you can see all these things, they surrounded the kingdom. As a result, they were easily protected. They were secured from the external attacks, just as it was with the Egyptians. So all these things should be reminding, you should be relating to the Egyptian civilization on the natural barriers as well. Another factor for the rise of the Chinese civilization was the religion. So during the Shang dynasty, the Chinese, they evolved a complex system of religious beliefs. So they prayed to many gods amid the nature of spirits. So they were believing in many gods through the spirits. So they believed that these spirits bring good fortune to them. So that's why they worshipped too many gods. And also, religion made the people to be united in all angles. Just as we have been mentioning, to say religion is a uniting factor even up to date. People may differ in political affiliation, may differ where they come from regions, but you find that when they belong to the same church, then they take themselves to be brothers. They take themselves to be brothers and sisters, no matter where they come from. So religion is a uniting factor. So this unity made them to come up with the civilizations to say, all right, we are brothers. We believe in the same spirits, in the same religious beliefs. So why if we just live together? Let us be living together and doing our things together as a civilization. So religion resulted into civilization. Another factor for the rise of the ancient Chinese civilization was the ancient philosophies, the ancient philosophies. So the Chinese people, they were guided by the philosophy. So the philosophy of most native Chinese won the hearts of many people in their society. So the societies, they were listening much to the philosophies or to the great thinkers. So for examples of those Chinese philosophers or thinkers, they were Confucius. Confucius, that was the originator or the founder of Confucianism, and again Lao Tzu, and there was also Shang Yang was another philosopher, and another one was Han Fei, Tu Kwa Wu, that was another philosopher. So you can see the names there. And again, these personalities or the philosophers, they led to three distinct philosophies. So there was the Confucianism, Taoism, as well as the legalism. So these were the three major philosophies that guided the Chinese civilization. So when we look at Confucianism, this one, it was the teaching of Confucius emphasizing on love for humanity. So Confucius, as a philosopher, he emphasized much on love for one another. And Taoism advocated the simple. Another factor for the rise of the Chinese civilization was the nature of the Chinese. So the Chinese, they controlled the floods as and developed irrigation system for farming. So they were devoted to jute. So the nature of the Chinese were devoted to jute. So usually those people who are devoted to jute, they make up something at the end of the day. So each and every day they were busy doing something. For example, here we are talking of controlling the floods. We have already said that they were using the peasants to make the dikes and develop the irrigation system there. So with that, then there were people who were now and again on duty. They were working, they were doing something. So I hope you learned something there to say when you are devoted to duty, you are going to make something at the end of the day. So that's the nature of the Chinese. They are devoted to duty. And another factor for the rise of the Chinese civilization was the able leaders. So the ancient China was ruled by many good leaders. So they were good leaders who led to the development of the civilization. So these leaders, they rallied the Chinese together for the development of their society. So those leaders, mainly, they were calling people to duty. Now and again, they were calling people to duty, organizing people so that they work, they go to work, they go to work each and every time. So it began with the Shang Dynasty. The Shang Dynasty between 770. So let us look at the political organization of the Chinese civilization. How were the Chinese organized? So the Chinese government revolved around the dynasties, just as we have mentioned them. So in all dynasties, the power was controlled from the Yellow River Valley. Why was it like that? Because uh, it was the core of rulers. It was where the rulers were living, and they just extended their control to other areas. So we see to it that the Yellow River Valley, that's where the kings were living, and they were just extending their territories to other areas. So they conquered other areas and gained control over them. So control was in the Yellow River Valley, where the kings were living. So the whole China was under one dynasty, and at certain times under different dynasties due to division. So as you have seen the map there, China is just very big. So at some times, uh, the whole big territory, it was under one dynasty. But sometimes there were two dynasties ruling at the same time. The other dynasty there, the other dynasty the other side. Hence, they were living at the same time. So the Chinese society was bound together by geography and different spoken languages. So they, Chinese, they were in groups, just as it was with the Greeks. You remember the Greek city-states? They were living in city-states, but they were bound to together by languages. So let us look at the administrative structure of the Chinese civilization. So the emperor was at the top of the organization, political organization, and emperors inherited the office. But if they went against people's wishes, they would be overthrown. They were removed from the throne. But it was to be inherited by their sons. But if they did not do well, they were overthrown by the people. So the emperors were assisted by the noble members to run the empire. So the king controlled the small area, while the princes and the nobles, they controlled most of the land. So the prince or the princes, those ones, they were given large territories again to rule, and the nobles, the nobles, they were the highly respected people in that society. So they were also given the societies to rule, while the king himself or the emperor here was just controlling a very small area. So the Chinese civilization was divided into small divisions for effective administration. So the administration itself, it was divided to say, all right, this area under this leader, this area under that leader. So the nobles were given that mandate to rule on behalf of the emperor. However, the government was highly centralized under the emperor. So the government still more, it was highly centralized. Although the nobles or the princes were given territories, they did not have that total mandate in those territories. So later dynasties, they evolved the civil service and structure the central provincial government. So in later dynasties, after the Shang, they had that civil service. People were employed to work in the government, and they structured the central provincial government as well. So there were people who were put to work on behalf of the government. So these services were bureaucratic and allowed for promotion within ranks. So services, people were employed to work in the government, but it was bureaucratic to say uh, each civil service or each part, it was independent of the other. So they were being promoted from this class to the other class to the other structure like that. So the Chinese civilization was highly influenced by philosophers. So that is the organizational administration structure. They relied much on the philosophers, the great thinkers. So a dynasty was inclined to the teachings of the philosopher after another. So one dynasty was just clinging to the teaching of one philosopher, was following the teaching of a certain philosopher. So the civilization had a faith in all great thinkers and centralized command of military. So what ordered the day was the great thinkers, the ideas of the great thinkers and the military command. And soldiers were comprising of commoners and slaves. So the commoners and slaves, they were the ones who made up the soldiers or the military. So an army of 3,000. And also there were the laws there in the Chinese civilization. So the Chinese civilization was based on strict laws, on the strict laws. So they based on the philosophies of the Greek philosophers and the Chinese tradition. So they owed much from the Greeks as well as from their own tradition, that is the Chinese tradition. So those who were found abusing the laws, they were punished severely, or sometimes they were even killed. They were even killed, those who were abusing the law.